Hello, everybody, and welcome to the August Baseline General Assembly. We are here with our community members, some on cam and some off, and are happy and excited to give some updates today to our viewers. So we will start with some outreach updates, go into sponsorship, core dev updates, grant updates, Tsc updates, standard updates, and then we will have an open floor. Any additions or questions about the agenda? Alrighty, so we will start with some outreach updates. First, I'll pass off to Mark Haddle to tell us about some of the events that the outreach team is assessing.
Very well. Okay. Well, first off that we have this month is the FinTech DevCon. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, getting everything ready, all the materials, and we are we've been given a workshop slot, so a full hour and a half to allow for some lively discussion.
And what day is your workshop?
But it's going to be on Thursday. That's August 26th at 1:30 p.m. Local time. That's Mountain Time for Denver. So
Okay.
1:30 p.m. and we've got the presentation all polished up and everything, and so we're actually really excited to present this. So other ones that we're looking at, we've got Black Hat is going to be happening this next week. We have a presence there as well, primarily with the Oasis team over there. And pardon me. And so and then we're also sitting here looking at a lot of other events to where we can get on the for the call for papers that a lot of the presentation that we've really polished up for FinTech DevCon is going to be definitely translatable to really evangelize the capabilities of Baseline in several different application environments across multiple industries. It's a great thing about it is it actually works in several different industries there. So
Awesome.
that's what we've got going. So watch the space. As we start getting more traction, it's really heartening to see a lot of these events that have really been shut down or gone virtual for the past two and a half years that are now going in person and that are going in person, and they're being heavily attended because I think just people want to get out and about and they want to get back to some semblance of being normal again. We also have at Bogota that we have. Yoav, did you want to give any, or Otto, did you want to give any type of color on that one? We've got FDevCon that is happening in Bogota, Colombia, coming up soon. You're on mute, Otto. Yeah.
Definitely excited about DevCon in Bogota. I have a couple of exciting news as well. I'm going to be joining the Polygon team, joining the Polygon ID team, and I know that Polygon is part of Baseline, so I'm also looking forward to connect whoever's working on Polygon, do a closer connection with Baseline. So should be exciting, but I'll definitely be in Bogota. It should be fun bringing some of my folks from Costa Rica as well. So looking forward to that.
Awesome. Nice to hear.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, so we don't have a speaking slot at DevCon in Bogota, but we do have some Baseline members who will be present and around. So hopefully everyone can coordinate and meet up there. All right. And yeah, any other event updates, Mark?
Other than those two, I mean, right now we've got the call for papers. We've submitted for Polygon Down Under, not Polygon, F Down Under in December in Sydney, Australia. We've got our colleague Samrat, because he's in that region. Would probably be a lot easier for him to get down and have a presence over there. We also have kind of gunning for a slot at NASSCOM as well, which is huge. I mean, very heavily attended. So we want to be able to get on the agenda there. If not, as a main speaker slot, at least, a breakout group because even when we have these, a lot of people see baseline and they're like, I've heard that somewhere, and they're intrigued about it. So
Awesome. Thank you.
there, so
Thank you. All right. Over to Mark Rimza for some updates on our work groups.
Sure. Thank you, Sonal. In the research work group, we continue to work on the alternative baseline solutions matrix, where we're comparing and contrasting various services and protocols to the baseline protocol. And I figured what better time than to share my screen and show this to the community. We don't have any grants out right now for research efforts, and some of these initiatives are moving kind of slow, but I thought it would be good to share some progress on this. So this is what the matrix looks like. You can see we have the baseline protocol at the top here, and we have a handful of people who are analyzing all of these different protocols, some EDI, some trusted third parties, value-added networks, other technologies, and comparing them on the main tenets of baseline that it provides, like network decentralization, compliance, interoperability, if the data consistency is reliably checked, etc. So this is a cool effort that we're doing. We hope to turn this into a sort of a one-pager, like a graphic that's easy for people in the community to look at a glance, sort of see the positioning of the protocol as a technology compared to other ones that sort of achieve a myriad of uses. Baseline can be applied to a lot of use cases for synchronization, where some of these are a little more focused, but I thought this would be a cool thing to show the community. And for some more updates in the research work group, research is ongoing for a handful of topics as related to baseline, like EDI, electronic document or data interchange, Internet of Things in the telecom space, and in agriculture. How can baseline relate there? More so for use case examples, I think right now. And two other examples of some topics that we're looking at are how baseline relates to automation, AI, and machine learning, and data sharing in healthcare. So again, this is an open source effort. Anybody who's interested in jumping on any of these research efforts, feel free to join the group. Or if you have a great idea or want to take one of our ideas for research, go ahead and apply for a grant if you would like. And that covers it for the research work group. And moving on, we can talk about the enablement work group. The biggest thing happening in the enablement work group right now is the fact that we're nearing completion on the master enablement deck to help explain baseline to our key personas, which I would call the curious business and technical people who are part of our baseline community. And this deck, we're hoping to share it soon, post it on the website, make it available to people, and it should make it a lot easier for all of the existing people to share it across the community. And I figured, just like the matrix, I'll go ahead and share my screen and give people a little preview of what the deck looks like. I'm not a designer by trade, so if this orange is too much for people, we can definitely change that and we can tell the designer. But we worked hard to get some data in here and get some research, set up the business problem that baseline aims to solve, and make it easier for people to wrap their heads around, what business case you would be solving for, how you could implement the protocol, what it is, what technologies it incorporates, really for all of the different personas that we're looking for to target in the protocol. So that's a little bit about that. Stay tuned for the master enablement deck. And if you want to help out with any of these enablement efforts, whether it's creating other materials to explain the protocol, target any of these personas, or really help out with talking to some of these businesses who have a really good handle on the use cases, but just need to bridge the gap between how the technology directly solves for their problems. Feel free to come over to the enablement work group and join some work with us. And with that, I'll pass it back to Sonal to carry on the rest of the updates.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm really excited about that deck because we used it for the FinTech DevCon slides, as Mark Haddle mentioned, and it's going to be a very valuable resource to alter based on who you're talking to. And hopefully we'll just continue to expand with like finance use case slides, telecoms and whatnot, and you can alter it for your needs. So thank you for spearheading that effort.
And I do like the colors. I mean, they're nice and warm. They're not retina searing, you know, and I think it would, you know, depending on, you know, a lot of different lighting and different, you know, room settings and stuff like that. I think the color scheme works quite well.
That's
Awesome.
good. I'm glad to hear.
Yeah, I've already been using that deck and just pulling out like 2 to 3 slides and discussions I've been having. So it's a very valuable neutral resource. And then it points to, well, are you interested in actually getting baselined? There's providers that can help you. Take a look at the standard, etc. So it tells the full story there.
And that's very much on purpose. We wanted to be able to create something that was, you know, able to, you know, pretty much anybody can draw from, you know, when they, you know, for their conversations and socializing the idea.
Yes. Great. So moving on to the IDC report, one of the other major efforts happening in the community. As some of you may know, we are working with IDC on a custom proposal for a piece that is currently titled Spending on Technology to Support Multi-Party Automation and Transaction Processing. So this custom report is going to be led on behalf of Consensus Mesh just to organize, which I and my teammates have been doing, but will be a multi-sponsored report. So very soon we'll be conducting outreach to other companies in the space to see who would like to join as either premium or standard sponsors, where a premium sponsor would be able to have a hand in designing the report, where a standard sponsor would be part of some of the fire chat conversations and just a part of the effort, have their name on it, etc., but not part of the design because you do need to kind of limit the scope at some point. But we are finalizing the research proposal. We have a list of sponsor prospects that anybody can make suggestions on as well in our baseline Slack. And we just wrapped up the messaging. So how we're going to reach out. Hopefully we will have the IDC team and our group of baseline community members working on this on a future baseline show to walk through the proposal, hopefully in the next week or 2. So that should be a really useful tool that will aid the research and enablement efforts by Mark as more direct data about the protocol. Any questions or additions about the report?
I think the only addition to make is that you could expect some good statistics in the enablement deck once that report gets finished.
Yep. Awesome. All right, and I will hand over to Carol for sponsorship or any other updates from the Oasis end.
Okay, well, it's been a slow summer, but so I don't have any new sponsors to report, but I am excited by some of the things that you've already heard about. I think that some of the work that certainly Mark's presentation and the presentations we're doing at face-to-face events, once again, will hopefully bring in some new interest that will result in new sponsors. And so I've already put out the pitch, but if you hear of anybody, please just copy me on any follow-up and I'll take care of making the whole explaining sponsorship and what it means. But I think we are reviving. We've had a few conversations that lagged over the summer that I'm looking forward to reviving now come into the fall. And certainly all the enablement materials and the use cases, things like that, that's really going to help people wrap their minds around what's going on. So I think we're going to see some results in the fall, but nothing to report this summer.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, over to Yoav for core dev updates.
Alrighty, thank you. Excuse me. So I'm going to start out with the SRI, the Simple Reference Implementation. So since the last GA, there's not too much to report on. Basically, the teams have, the team, which is broken up into smaller, either individuals or teams of two, made their proposals for their individual components and kind of have began planning out, or have finished the stage of planning out how they're going to take it through, and have now sort of begun that development phase. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. There's about, oops, I closed my Zoom window. And now it is tiny. Come back, please. Okay. There's about 15 open issues that are public on the GitHub. There we go. So each kind of component is broken up into tasks that are kind of outlined in these different issues. So you can see, Ogden is working on CI/CD introduction. So he went ahead and outlined what needs to be done for that with reference materials as well as tasks. So you can kind of see that for all of the different components that are being worked on. Here's Keith's work step, interfaces and utilities. Same thing, acceptance criteria, some tasks on how he's going to go ahead and work on that, as well as his document. So there, like I said, are about 15 of these. I think the nice thing about the way we're doing this is everything, because this is part of the roadmap and is a major part of the open source initiative, everything is open and available to be seen. All of the progress is being tracked both through these issues as well as in the drive. So to show you the drive, most of these are linked in the issues. So the specific issue, a lot of times will have a link to the specific document that they're referencing, but this drive itself is also public, and the progress in here can be tracked. We have our meeting notes. Once a week the team meets, and a log of the notes can be found there. And then each component, like I said, has its own individual document where you can kind of see what they're up to. So I think that kind of covers the SRI. A couple other notes in the core dev community. There's a grant request, which was discussed among several TSC members. And I think it was for an RFP involving DIDs and VCs for open source invoice management. And that, I think, is going to be potentially transitioned into a blip, which is pending the author of that grant request. So moving forward, that might kind of turn itself into its own operation, since it's drifted a little far from where RFP 1 now stands. So, hopefully we'll have some updates in the future of whether or not that development proceeds. Finally, blip or baseline calendar, which was part of the Amster-based event, is still being developed here by one of our core devs, Vibov. So I'll go ahead and let you give us any updates you have since the last GA, Vibov.
Yeah, so I raised a pull request, and I didn't expect it to I was expecting some remarks, and I got really good feedback on that. So I'm very grateful for the members of that. So the pull request, so basically the idea, so the way I understood how zero knowledge worked was different. So I would have to redo a lot of things. So specifically, the comment by Andreas, which was the idea, was to store the data on chain and then go ahead and create a Merkle tree with the leaves as time availability and delete them as they were taken, and to maintain that state via a circuit. And and yeah, so that's what exactly like that's what I'm in process of researching and working on that right now. So yeah, that's about it. That's the update from my side.
Awesome. Any questions for Vaibhav from the group?
Why did you decide to move over from your original implementation to one of a Merkle tree or sparse Merkle tree, whatever you said?
Yeah, so right now, like, so the verification, it doesn't make any sense to have the verification process just like there has to be a way for that. The verification process needs to make sense. And with my earlier implementation, it just like if I'm just storing the data on a database and having the signal to having the circup circuits just to verify uh, a signal which is private, that doesn't just make sense. So the idea should be that the verification process needs to make sense. So this implementation is actually proper zero knowledge. The one that I'd submitted was not actually like it was not even zero knowledge basically.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And just your experiences and learnings are really valuable for future core dev work as well. So we'll be sure to continue learning from you and documenting it and improving things where we can to create resources. Awesome. Any other questions or comments? All right. So also on the topic of grants, we'll just quickly cover some of the RFPs that we have available and up for grabs. So we have the RFP 1 regarding the DIDs and VCs incorporation into open source digital asset wallets. That is still open. There have been a few requests put in the last few months since it was posted. And the TSC has been responding and talking through with the requesters if it matches or not, but that is still out there and open, as well as the second RFP related to the wallets for incorporating EDDSA keys. So as always, we encourage groups, companies, any developers with interest out there to reach out and look at previous baseline shows or other resources we have on more context for that work, and let us know if you're interested or have questions. And our third RFP is for the reference implementation test harness. That was actually posted since the last baseline General Assembly. So I'll quickly cover that. And that is regarding a test harness for proving baseline standard compliance, and would be hand in hand with some of the simple reference implementation work that is happening. So we're looking for a group of developers, whether they're experienced in the test harness development space or university labs or any groups out there that are interested in taking on this work, which would involve working closely with our TSC members, our standards experts, and our simple reference implementation group. So there's lots of people and resources to help develop that need. Andreas, did I miss anything on any of those RFPs that you'd want to highlight?
No, you haven't. Just adding that it's important work, as you pointed out, and that anybody who, calling on QA automation engineers out there, if you want to, highlight your profile, this is a great opportunity because this will be utilized heavily. It's, and there's some money involved. I mean, and when I say, engineers, not only, it turns out to be roughly $50 an hour. So I know that might not be, anything for our Silicon Valley friends. But, in other parts of the world, I think that is a significant amount. So if you know of talented QA automation engineers in, somewhere out there in Central South America, in Vietnam, Nepal, please, or Malaysia, it's like, please let them know, point them to that. Might be a great opportunity for them to develop their personal brand, or the brand of their team, their organization. So that's the only addition I would like to make.
Thank you. Yeah, so we do have a chunk of the grant funds still remaining this year, but hopefully not for long, as we are anticipating some requests for those RFPs to come in, as well as our SRI work group will be submitting grants for their development efforts. So hopefully we'll see those funds quickly deplete and get put to good use, and then we will replenish them as needed. So with that, I'll hop over to some TSC updates. Samrat was unable to join us today, but really the TSC is just focusing on reviewing the roadmap that was outlined early in the year to continue reassessing what the priorities are. And early on, it was discussed that something like the reference implementation, just keeping in mind the concurrent efforts and tools that would be useful, is a really valuable and important step forward, especially for a standards body. So they are consistently reviewing the roadmap, having grant requesters join the sessions to explain their proposals and just quickly get feedback and answer questions, and working on maintaining the repo and managing the core developer team. All right, and with that, I will hand over to Andreas for some standards updates.
So while the official working group is still on pause, the SRI work has brought up further questions around the standard. So we will be spinning up sort of like a Q&A sessions that will hopefully produce some editorial PRs to the standard that flesh out some of the explanatory gaps that are there, and hopefully this exercise will make the standard more accessible. And also potentially, it's like they're, figure if we missed any requirements, or there are redundant requirements or anything like that, that we should say, well, this might, in the end, this might be a D instead of an R, or we could get rid of that altogether. So this is sort of like a new iteration with a fresh set of eyes after letting it sit for a little while. Again, we're still waiting for a final process of how to actually move the specification forward from the EA Community Projects PGB. That is still entirely, not entirely, but that process has not been defined or has not been published yet. So, until that is done, any formal work apart from editorial work is still on hold, because it doesn't make any sense to move forward at this point until we have certainty from the PGB.
Thank you. And yeah, with your mention of having groups of developers digging into the standard at this time, in the last Core Devs call, it was requested that we start up the standards calls again. So I pinged Andreas yesterday, and I think next Wednesday we will kick that off again. So looking forward to that. And one more TSC update I will address based on a question in chat about where John Wolpert is. So John is actually on a medical leave right now. So he stepped down in his TSC committee position for the remainder of this year. I am taking his seat on behalf of our consensus mesh angle, as well as a vote was conducted in the last TSC session, thanks to the help of the Oasis team. So John is away for the time being, and hopefully we'll be back feeling better than ever, as we do miss his energy and all of his special effects and everything he brings to our show as well as our community. All right. And with that, I will open the floor to the rest of our gang here on the call to see what else people are working on, learning about, questions, anything. What else is going on with our community members here?
Don't everybody jump in at once.
Oh, I actually have a question for the outreach team, if I may.
Please.
Didn't want to interrupt the flow. We discussed on a baseline show, what was it, like 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago? Time flies when you're having fun. That you know, we you know, the outreach team should go to, you know, the water holes in the where the animals congregate, aka go to SDOs and explore, you know, working groups that are already working on things that are basically primed for multi-party coordination, or primed for multi-party coordination under zero knowledge, to get more companies involved. And I think the agreement on or the consensus of that on during that show was that would be a good idea. Has there been any effort or, you know, any updates as to that that effort to engage SDOs and identify working groups where, you know, the outreach team could participate / engage?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say,
No,
we're evangelizing this to anybody that will, you know, pause and take a listen and stuff. And, you know, we pretty much have a lot of our own elevator pitches, you know, kind of down pat. We don't have really a template that we've been using. A lot of it's really been kind of ad hoc as we engage our own, you know, personal networks, you know, which really starts off with, what are you working on? Happy that you asked. We're working, you know, with baseline protocol because it addresses a persistent problem that practically every enterprise out there encounters. So, you know, which involves, you know, how do I share data with my external parties in a way that I don't run into my privacy compliance, my security profile issues, or even competitive intelligence. I want to be able to bridge that gap. And it's a persistent problem that everybody, you know, knows is there, but has really kind of, you know, thought there's not really a solution right now that is, you know, performant enough to make that happen, especially when you start to have multi-party environments at scale. And, you know, this is getting a lot of interest and stuff, but, you know, from the enterprise side, I guess the business is, you know, there's this persistent thinking that there is a product ready that we can plug in and immediately just configure for your own architecture, and boom, you're ready to go. And I'm like, well, we're not to that point. However, we have the differentiator, or the advantage is that this is not going to, you know, require, you know, a whole host of requirements and dependencies from a technical standpoint. And that really kind of, they're like, wait a minute, you know, they're not used to hearing that. They're like, is it really that simple? And I said, yes, it is that simple. You know, it just requires, you know, a certain, I guess, sponsorship of someone from the business side, you know, as well as, you know, protection from a little bit of hiccups or anything, because a lot of people, you know, maybe it's CTOs or analysts or anybody within innovation that wants to kind of flesh out an enterprise-wide solution, it's like, well, what if it doesn't work? And is it going to be my throat being choked and stuff? And I think one thing that really is helpful is if you have someone on the inside, in a leadership position, to saying, I'm going to let these guys try this out, and I don't want anybody criticizing them or throwing cold water on them or anything like that. Let's truly see that this works.
But to your question, Andreas, I have and the team has been looking through a list of all those different organizations that we talked about a couple shows ago, and we have our next enablement meeting actually tomorrow. So we're going to go through and see which organizations make the most sense, align with the use cases that we find most common, like supply chain, telecom, even manufacturing, things like that. So we're going to take a look, and the enablement deck is sort of a good jumping off point for this, because we'd like to turn it into a template that can be sort of industry use case specific, create some extra slides and fit it in there so that we can jump in and have some conversations with them. So I think once we get that list of companies pared down, I know you have a lot of experience talking to those organizations. So I'd like to pick your brain on how you think it's best to get our foot in the door on an entry level conversation there. And maybe we could talk about that a little bit here or not, what your thoughts are on that when we are talking to these organizations.
I would find a reference contact there from whoever knows in the community knows someone, ideally a chair or even someone who's on the executive team, and then work with them to figure out which working groups would be a good fit, and then approach those working groups and present what baseline is, and do a call for action. You want to do some, you're doing X. This is something that will help you address that X. Since everybody's already working on it, it's like, why don't we do something concrete, right? Get involved. Let's do a pilot that utilizes what you're working on in the context of baseline. That's basically the approach that I would take if I were you guys. And happy to provide any context I have. I know Samrat, for example, is like deeply involved with like NASCOM and knows everybody and their cousin there. So that's like we have great connections to IEEE. So it's like there's a whole fairly decent list of SDOs that would be good to connect with and get involved, even if it's really getting involved in those working groups.
Yeah, we've had some success in engaging with some of the various user groups, like within the context of ServiceNow and Red Hat as well. And we're starting to pull in some of the folks from the AWS team. And we should be having an update from an AWS perspective here coming soon. And I do think it'd be in the best interest for us all collectively to continue to pursue the SAP angle. I think that we could get a deeper level of involvement from some of the technical folks in the user groups in the context of SAP. And that's something that we continue to pursue on our side as well.
Awesome.
I had a question for Johan regarding the DID VC implementation and like an open source wallet. I know that Transmute was sort of involved in the implementation of, like, I think it was a DID element library, which like implemented SideTree on Ethereum. Are they also likely to be involved in this like open source DID wallet stuff?
They were until the Tsc couldn't get its shit together fast enough, and they had other business priorities, and therefore they pulled their proposal. their grant proposal for the RFP, because we didn't move on it for like 3 months.
Okay, got it. All right.
So since then, has the TSC changed their minds in terms of the RFP or not? Or am I allowed to ask
No, the
this
RFP
question
is still
while I'm
out there.
retired?
It's there. We actually, as a lesson learned, any new grant proposal, we have now a process that will be followed, such that we can move to a decision ideally within 4 weeks
Mhm.
of a proposal being made once it has been, concretized to the point, has been made, and then iteratively concretized to the point that that the TSC thinks it's a good fit.
So the door is still open, right?
Yeah, of course, for both, for the digital wallet and the EDDSA integration. You can do both in the same go.
Okay, yeah, so they it is a priority. They just didn't have the mechanics for moving quick enough before, but now we do.
Yeah, it was just do a proposal. It will be you'll within a week or two you'll present it to the TSC. The TSC members will review prior to the meeting, and then if it makes sense, if there are no requests for changes to the proposal, then we'll go straight to a vote.
Yeah,
Well,
so the
I believe-
RFPs themselves, just to add on, were voted by the majority of the TSC with the thumbs up. So it is still a high priority. So I think that took a little
Awesome.
bit of time too to discuss how big of a priority it was, if it was a proper use of our grant funds, and then the consensus turned out to be it definitely is. It is necessary for baseline in the current stages of the standard.
And I believe Transmute actually in their closed is it an issue, right, in the grant, or whatever it
Yes.
is? They left behind all the work they had done up to that point, so arguably it'd be easier. Anybody who wants to pick it up would have everything that they've collected so far, and then you can
You have
Get some fat
literally
cash.
80% of the work done. I mean,
okay,
maybe
nobody do it.
60%.
You don't want to do it all. I got it. How
Yeah,
much money was
Keith
it?
can do it.
How much
Yeah.
was this one? 15?
30 grand.
A million?
No, 30 grand.
30. 30
30
million?
and
30K.
the EDDSA is 15K USD, not ETH.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that question, Otto, and the conversations about that.
Yep.
All right. Any other topics to discuss here? All right. I think we will have some exciting future baseline shows, one of which will focus on the master enablement deck, and we'll talk through that. We'll kind of do like a live enablement session with the deck Mark created. We'll have the IDC team on to go through that proposal for when we start outreach. And then I also have some guests in the queue lined up. So looking forward to our future shows. And thank you all for joining our August General Assembly, as well as providing updates, telling us what's going on. And we will stay in touch on Slack and see you all next week on the Baseline Show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Cheers,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Stay tuned in for the last 10-minute podcast Featuring
featuring me trying to get a group together to collect